I'm Steven. That's Erock. That's John. We're from Just Got Played, and we are running down the top 25 Cult of the New games. So, what does Cult of the New mean? Well, we did this last year, and we said games from 2018 on were all that was eligible. This year, it's a year later, so it's 2019 on. So we've looked at games that were published 2019 and later. We picked our favorites. People in our Discord channel picked their favorites. I aggregated all that into a top 25 list, and I'm going to run that down for you, but then we're going to give you our top 10s along with that list. And I will say there was a lot of movement because there were a lot of 2018 games on the list last summer, so they just had to drop off.
I agree. I feel like I lost a lot of games in 1 year.
Yeah. All right. Well, down 25 on the aggregated list is Cult Super Express. So that's the lightweight card-only version of Cult Express. At 24, we have Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion, the little brother to Gloomhaven. Gloomhaven's probably too old to be on this list.
Yeah.
Then next up was High Rise. So that's the one that I personally like a lot. You got the system where you time track, move around, and build buildings and mess with your opponents. 22 is the Search for Planet X, which I have not played. That's a deduction game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very good deduction game.
All right. 21 is Dwellings of Elder Vale. The spiritual successor to that is getting delivered now to people, I think, Andromeda's Edge, right? Mm-hmm. So I like Dwellings of Elder Vale, but interested to see Andromeda's Edge too. At 20, very popular game, Earth. I remember when that was hard to get there for a while.
Yeah.
At number 19, a modernization of an old game, Libertalia, Winds of Galecrest. Normally, I don't allow sort of reprints or whatever on the list, but this really is a reworking of the game, so that's cool. At 18, we have Whistle Mountain, worker placement game from Luke Laurie. I like Luke Laurie games.
Oh, yeah.
At number 17, we have an expansion, which normally, again, I wouldn't really allow expansions on this list, but Viticulture World, the cooperative expansion, really just feels like a completely
That's not an
game.
expansion.
Yeah.
It's a reimagining.
It's an expansion because you have to have the other game to play it, but
yeah, that's
really,
fair.
It's just a different game. Yeah. At number 16, we have The White Castle, De Vere's follow-up to the Red Cathedral.
Not the restaurant.
Though that is also in my top 10 list.
Fair enough. Yes.
It's definitely not Cult of the New, though.
That's true.
Neither are the burgers. All right.
At 15, we have Orichalcum. So I've talked about that on the channel before. Number 14, we have Wingspan. I thought Wingspan was too old, but apparently it's 2019. So Wingspan is just holding on.
Only 20. Oh, man.
Interesting that it didn't make the top 10. It was on the top 25 last year. At number 13, we had the Guild of Merchant Explorers, which feels like a flip and write, except you don't write, you actually play stuff like a real board game. And
yep. You do flip, though.
Like a big boy.
It's like a flip and write, except it's a real board game.
At 12, we have Planet Unknown. Get polyominoes to terraform a planet. And at number 11, we have Ark Nova, which is you make a wildlife preserve, is it? It's not a zoo, right? It's a wildlife preserve. I haven't played it.
Oh, it's very good.
Preserve, yeah.
I think it's currently number 2 on BGA.
Really?
Yep.
Like most played?
It's like most popular game. Like number 2.
It's new, fairly new on BGA, and they changed a little bit how the scoring works. So you actually get a positive score instead of negative, and then whoever has 2 points wins. So.
I got to look it up. I feel like, somebody's going to call me out. Like, it is not number 2.
Well, since you're looking it up, we're going to move into the top 10. And
This
so
is
now,
number 4. Excuse me.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Well, for the top 10, what we're going to do is we're just going to go around the horn and we're all going to talk about our number 10s. And then we'll talk about what is the aggregate, the people's number 10 as well. So, all right, I guess, Erock, why don't you go ahead and start us off with your number 10?
Absolutely. So I have a lot of fun making this list. I ended up with 149 games, I believe, that I ranked. And that should be all of the different games that I played with from the past 5 years. which,
A
isn't
different
a
new
whole,
game that you've played.
right, exactly, which isn't a whole ton, but, we have real jobs. So we do this for fun and on the weekends and stuff. You know what I mean? But but I feel like I still got a really good taste of a lot of different things over the past 5 years. My tastes still do lean a little bit older, though I surprise myself a bit with the Cult of the New, because there's a lot of my, all-time favorite games are in this list also. Probably not my number one, but there's a lot of them that are there. And without rambling on any further, I'll go ahead and tell you my number 10 of the Cult of the New, which is games in the last 5 years, is Mosaic. I really like Mosaic. It's one of those, it's a lot like Terraforming Mars kind of games where you get a whole bunch of cards and it works off of tags and things like that. But it's basically like, it's a civilization game that isn't that deep into the civilization part. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't really have wars with other people. The placing the things on the map is a lot different. Like, you don't really start somewhere and then have to go out from there. You can basically play anywhere in the Mediterranean that you want to at any point in time. But it's really just tied into these themes of civilization and not really an in-depth simulation of civilization, as it were. But I really like how the game plays. You can, like I said, you can put like different towns and cities and stuff out on the map, which then gives you these different resources, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just like you'd think of a civilization game, but it's really just all contained in these cards and the way that the tags work and how they trip off of each other. I don't think this has gotten a lot of traction, mostly because it is a giant game that costs a fair amount of money in general. So I get it. You can only get so many of these things on the shelves. You can only afford so many of them. But I really enjoyed Mosaic, as did everybody I've played it with. And I've played it with approximately 15 or 16 different people at this point, and everybody's had a good time playing it. It is a bit long. That's just kind of the way these games go. But it's incredibly well made. It's very enjoyable, and I highly recommend it. Give it a try if you can.
It's funny, you were talking about it, and I was like, isn't this game massive? It felt like you were underplaying how big it was, but you got there. Yeah,
it is. It's massive. Yes.
Civilization's one of those themes that it's either long enough for the theme to come through, and it's too long for most people, or it's short and punchy, but the theme doesn't come through. It's so hard to get a Civilization game that hits that sweet spot.
Civilization: A New Dawn, I think, did a pretty good job of that.
It had a great mechanic that Ark Nova stole.
Yeah, Ark Nova stole.
Implemented. But yeah, I hope people keep doing it. I love that mechanic.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to my number 10. And I mentioned it earlier. It is Planet Unknown. So Planet Unknown, again, you've got this Lazy Susan, and it's got all these polyominoes in it. And, on your turn, you rotate it to put one of the stations in front of you, and you choose one of those polyominoes. And the polyomino that you choose determines what you get to do that turn, because it has two different things on it, which lets you move up on these tracks, which trigger different things for you, right? And you're trying to fill up rows, you're trying to fill up columns. There might be other things that you're trying to do, competing with your neighbors over things to score. But if you've heard me talk about my game group, we like simultaneous play games that support a lot of players, and so this fits really well with that. If I'm having just a short game night, we can play this no problem. And the production value is actually pretty good on it too. Like, even just the retail version, you have that nice Lazy Susan, which works. It's not just like a gimmick. I mean, it helps the game work.
It's the least Euro of anything you can describe as a cube pusher, because really that's what you're doing. But it doesn't feel like a Euro. It is really neat little polyomino game.
Yeah, the Lazy Susan really works. It is one of those things you're like, that is such a gimmick. And then you sit down and play, you're like, it's completely functional, though. It does exactly what it's meant to do.
That's such a gimmick.
Right.
It works.
And with the expansion, you can get a lid for the Lazy Susan.
Oh, mine's on the way.
Or you can use a shower cap. Just the more you know.
Right.
All right, John, what's your number 10?
My number 10 is a Athenaeum Mystic Library. It's a very interesting game that probably was themed to be Harry Potter, but then they couldn't get the license, so they just made it a random Mystic Library. But essentially, you're fitting books on a shelf in a kind of polyomino style, and you're trying to do designs that are moving down a conveyor belt. And if you don't complete the design by the time it falls off, you just don't get a chance to do that design anymore. and you use magic wands to rearrange the bookshelf, and then you can get wild card books out of the bag, and it's just a really neat game of just trying to move stuff around your board, fill out your bookcase, get bonus points, and the theme's really neat. The gameplay's kind of simple, but it's fun, and it's just a really neat little game that I find it cozy. I like the theme, and it plays well. It's easy to teach. It's just one of those that hits all those nice sweet spots of a nice game that's medium weight that you don't have to worry about. So I really enjoy it. Athenaeum Mystic Library.
Yeah,
kudos to you, sir. I thought for sure Steven would be the one that tells me about a game I've never heard about before. So
you should check it out. It's really good.
It is on my list. It's not in my top 10. John and I played this at Dice Tower Con, and I think you actually just bought it while we were at the con. Ordered a
I sure did.
Something. But I don't know what it is, but I just liked arranging the books on the shelves. I don't know. I just like the little, like I'm playing with a dollhouse or something. I don't know what it was, but it's a good game.
Like 7 out of the 10 of these games, I was halfway through the first game, and then I bought it before I finished. when I find a game I like, I know.
Yeah,
you don't gotta tell me twice.
Well, my number one, I traded with somebody while I was on a cruise ship in the middle of the Atlantic. So if you remember that one, so spoiler, but we'll get there. All right, so the People's Choice number 10 award goes to a party game. So Erock, can you tell us about So Clover?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I like this game a lot, actually. This was, of course, on my list, as it were, but I'm not going to weed through the numbers and let you know where it's at. But this is a really cool game. It's by the same makers that did Just One, which is fantastic. That's probably the best party game to come out in the last 5-10 years. And So Clover's a lot of fun also. It's not nearly as boisterous kind of thing, but the idea is that you get these, all right, so you get like a little clover, right? And on this clover, it has 4 basic pegs. And what you get is these cards that are squares with holes in the middle of them. They have 4 words around the side. So my card might say horse, road, microphone, blogger. I don't know, right? And I'm going to get 4 of these cards. And you mix them up and you randomly put them down on these pegs so that there's just 4 sides of 2 words each. All right. And then what you have to do is you try to come up with 1 word to sum up the 2 words on each side. So if I ended up with like horse and sun as my 2 words, I have to come up with a word to get everybody else at the table to guess which of these cards go there. Because after you it's all set up and you write your words on the side of the things, then you grab an extra one just to be a pain in the butt and mess up. And then you shuffle them all up and you just throw them down on the top. And then when it's your turn to present, you give everybody your clover, which has your 4 words written around the side and a stack of these cards with all these words on them. And the point is that they need to try to figure out which 2 words go with your word on each side of the clover. And it's really interesting trying to get to these words and trying to reason out how people got to their words. It's a really cool game that it's a lot of fun. Like I said, it's not boisterous fun like Just 7 or Just One, where oh, that was
just
awesome.
7. You just get a sentence.
Just 7, exactly. All right, but it's really cool. It's a really cool way of trying to figure out this little word puzzle. And there's little things that go into it too, because sometimes there's words in the middle that screw up what you're trying to do. You know what I'm saying? Well, these 2 words, the hospital fits perfect. But then in the middle is doctor. So that doctor's out there for them to look at. So you can't be like, I can't use that because they're going to think for sure it's doctor, but it's not doctor. And it's going to screw the whole clover.
Or you don't think that, and then they guess doctor instead, and you go, I didn't see it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's what really happens.
That's what really happens.
You know what this game is, though? Absolutely. This is the distilled version of Codenames, and it cuts out all the overhead. That's exactly what this game is.
Basically right.
I agree. It limits your options, so you don't have so many cards, and you just got one person making something out of a little bit of words. So to me, it's a much smoother game of Codenames.
And friendlier.
And you're all doing your clover at the same time, so you're not staring at the one person waiting for them to give you a clue.
It's a lot less stressful in that regard.
I agree.
Just taking turns solving. I think it's Codenames, but way better.
It's a lot of fun.
I haven't heard that parallel before, but it is.
Yeah, me either. And I didn't think of that way, but I think you're right. Yeah.
This is John's show. Erock and I are just here to be pretty.
Well, I do that too. So 3 for 3.
All right. So moving on to number 9. Let's see. Where did we say? Erock, why don't you go ahead with your number 9?
I'm going to be very quick with this one because I have a feeling we're going to hear about this one more than once tonight. My number 9 game of the past 5 years is Thunder Road Vendetta. This is made by Restoration Games, a reiteration of an old game from back in the 70s, and it's basically Mad Max the Race. And I think it's awesome. This game surprised me. This is one of those things, if you've seen me talk about this on our channel before, I went over to a buddy's house. He's like, this is what we're playing. And my heart went, well, all right. And by the end, I'm standing up and cheering. Like, it was just a great time. It is so cinematic. It's something that you have to experience. It might not be your cup of tea, but experience it one time because it's the most cinematic game I've played in 10 or 20 years. With the possible exception of the, what's the alien game?
Nemesis?
Yeah, with the possible exception of Nemesis. Those are the 2 most thematic games I've played in a long time. They're both incredible.
Game. The alien game
isn't
an alien game. Yeah.
Right.
Wait. So, okay, I have one Thunder Road burning question, though. Maximum Chrome or no?
Yeah, I mean... If I'm going all in.
I don't want to spoil anything, but I'm waiting on a boat to show up.
Right. And, don't feel like...
I knew you guys would be Maximum Chrome, but I'm on the no side. So.
Yeah, I was just going to say, everybody out there in the world, you don't need that stuff, okay? That stuff is pretty. It's awesome to have. You don't need it. Go out and get the base game that's small.
For like $50. It's worth it. You will get your money worth out of it.
Yeah, I think you get it for like $35. I think you get it cheaper. That's what I don't want people to pass on the game because they see the Maximum Chrome is $300. Like, just get the version and play it.
Yeah,
this is the only game I know of that has so much Kickstarter bloat that you do not miss if you just want the base game. It still plays super fun with just the base game.
I mean, I want all the Kickstarter
I got Maximum
bloat,
Chrome coming,
but you don't need it.
I need it. You don't.
All right. Well, my number 9 is, I guess, a little bit of a cheat. Because the Crew Quest for Planet 9 is probably too old to be on this list. But the Crew Mission Deep Sea is not.
Cheater.
And that's actually, I've had both versions of the game, and I kept Mission Deep Sea. But they're both really good. And this is one of those things where it's like, does that work? Would that make sense? Cooperative trick taking? Like that? Why would those two things go together, And then... But you play it, and it does, and it's really interesting too because sort of meta will develop. Like, oh wait, why did he do that, or why didn't he do that, or and so the sort of the dynamic between the group and why did somebody pick this, why did somebody play that, that sort of unfolds over time, which is good because the quests get harder, over time as well. There's a lot of replayability there. Actually, I don't know how many quests are in Mission Deep Sea. The original one had like 50, which is a lot. And I mean, it's not like every quest is replayable, right? So it's not like, it's a one and done, like a campaign game or something, but
no, they just get harder, like you said. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it gets tricky because, every round there's some rule like, oh, well, I have to take the blue 7. Well, crap, I don't have any blue cards in my hand, so that's going to be tough, right? Like somebody's going to have to slough it to me. And so anyway, that's what really makes the game interesting. You're all trying to achieve the objectives, but the objectives have to be done usually in order. And there's, specific stipulations that can make it hard, almost impossible. Actually, there's several times when people have looked at the board with their hand and the thing that was signed up, and they're like, well, this is impossible. And I'm like, just play it. Just play it, right? Don't let's not just fold. Just play it out. And so what if we don't win or not? But because frequently there is just some buried way that you can win it, But yeah, anyway, the Crew, it's great. It's cheap. It's a little card game. And, I don't actually play a lot of cooperative games, but this one is great.
Yeah, it's fantastic, man. I mean, it's one of those things like how did nobody ever think of cooperative trick? You think cooperative trick taking and you think that's the dumbest thing. That's so crazy. And then you play it and you're like, this is genius. How did nobody think of this before? Yeah, it's really good.
Amazing. All right. John, another game that I briefly mentioned earlier. Why don't you tell us your number 9?
Yes. So I have Colt Express. I have, especially thanks to Steven, everything that's ever been made for Colt Express except for the AI characters, because who cares? It's one of my favorite games. I love the concept. There is nothing that gets people walking by to stop in their tracks more than Colt Express. They see the 3D train, like, what is happening here? And I got the play mat and everything. It just looks amazing. It's super fun. It's so thematic. Like, so many people love that game. Unfortunately, it's aged off of the list. So just like you were saying, how do you make a cooperative trick-taking game? It shouldn't work. They took the biggest footprint board game that I've ever played and enjoyed, and they turned it into a card game that can literally fit in a breast pocket and have room left over. You somehow still get the entire game in this very small package. It feels like you just played a game of Colt Express, but it is 10 times shorter, that takes up no table space, and it's so simple to teach. And that's Colt Super Express. I love this concept of taking big games. Let's face it, as we get older, as you know, we get further away from people, we move to places, it gets harder and harder to get together for games. To be able to just go, hey, we're all together, let's just pull this game out real quick and play it. And it takes 15 minutes. That's amazing. I wish more companies would take great games and distill them down like this. But it's so elegant. It feels like you just played Colt Express, and I've never had it fall flat. Everyone I've ever taught this game was like, we need to play it again. Because it's quick, it's fast, you just play it, you play it again, bam, everyone had a blast. So, Colt Super Express, if you like that concept at all, get the game. It's super cheap, and you will not regret it.
I think we played that like on a whim at a convention. Just we were looking for some filler thing to do, and we're like, "Hey, this is good."
You stood up because you own Super Colt Express as well. We both owned it for years, and you stood up from the table and you said, "I'm never playing Colt Express again." If I play Colt Express, I'm playing this version of it, and I think, and to this day, I think is accurate. You have not played regular Colt Express since then.
That's true.
That's how good this game is.
Wanted to, but yeah, I don't own it. I only own Colt Super Express now. And I haven't played it, Colt Express, since. Yeah. All right. So the Peoples, number 9. I will just mention briefly because I think it's going to show up later on the list. I think it's going to. I mean, I got the whole list here in front of me. Anyway.
Spoilers.
Who knows?
It's Villagers. So Villagers it's a card game.
The end. We'll move on later.
Yeah, it's basically all cards in a weird deck box thing. I don't know. The Sinister Fish, they have that weird box for this trilogy. They made a trilogy of games: Villagers, Streets and Moon. Yeah, it's just Moon, not Moons, right? It's Moon. Yeah. So, and I think 2 out of those 3 are good games. So Villagers. Anyway, you build a tableau of these villagers. You're trying to recruit them off the road. But we'll talk more about that later. But that is the People's Choice, number 9. All right, so let's move on to number 8.
Number 8. This has been previously mentioned in, I believe, the People's Choice version of the Countdown to 10. But my number 8 game is another giant game. I do like the giant games, and this is one of them. You don't have to get the giant version, but we have everything with the little sound things and everything, and that is Dwellings of Eldervale. I think this game is really cool. It doesn't hurt that we have the little sound bases for the monsters, and when you move them around, they're like, "Argh!" I mean, that's just super cool and all that. But, that's not the game. The game is really, it's hard to describe. It's like an area control worker placement semi-fighty game.
Are there any dice in that?
Are there any dice? Yes, there are actually, because you have combat. Yes. Yeah. So there are some dice in the game as well. And the way the combat works is really cool. And basically, like, you have these different characters like a wizard and a knight or whatever and stuff. And they all have kind of special abilities when you place them. Some of them can't only be placed in certain things and whatnot, and some of them are better in combat and all this. But basically, when you do have an engagement with somebody, you add up your strengths, and that's how many die you roll. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to lose. Like, it's basically a risk system, kind of, where it's like the highest numbers square off against each other. So it's entirely possible that you're rolling 6 dice and I roll 1 die and I win because I rolled the highest number, which is kind of weird and crazy. But I kind of like it in this game because it's just that kind of game where weird stuff happens. And it's really cool, and these special abilities in this weird place. Plus, there's this other thing. This is a Luke Laurie thing here, where when your guys die, when you bring them back from the board, they accomplish something. You put them in things. Like, this is also true with, what's the bridge one? Whistle Mountain. Yeah, like, this is Luke Laurie's thing. And it's not just these 2 games. It's kind of like his thing is what I'm saying. Like, he likes to give you something to do when you're getting your stuff back. And that makes a big difference in this game also. So, like, I can, at the end of my round, I bring all my people back and I start assigning them to things. This guy's going to give me a stone, and this guy's going to get me a jewel and stuff. And that stuff, it really kind of pushes the game along too. I know I'm really kind of vague. It's a big game. I like the exploration part of it. I mean, at the end of the day, you're getting like 3 of these color, 3 of these color, 3 of these color tiles, but still you're pulling them off a stack. So you don't know what's coming out until it comes out, kind of a thing. And then, of course, there's these cards that represent the dungeons. Like, there's so many different things going on in this game. And it really just comes down to like how you play the colors. So, like, if I build a lot of stuff in blue, I'm going to score a lot in blue. So it kind of works that way. And you work it yourself that way too. So the things that you invest in are the things that you're going to score at the end of the game. It's a lot of fun. This is another one where you don't need the massive box and the minis and the little sound machines under them to play this game and have fun. I'd really like to play the spiritual successor, which is Andromeda's Edge. That seems really cool as well. It might just really be a difference between, do you like fantasy or do you like sci-fi? One of them's going to probably be more complicated, but, do you like fantasy or do you like sci-fi? I like this game.
Champions of Midgard with Valhalla. Kind of similar feel.
Yeah, a bit. I agree with you.
I think you downplayed a little bit because you talked about how sort of random the combat was. But I mean, half the time when I was going into combat, I wanted to lose.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
The Loki strategy
wasn't that bad. It's not really the Loki strategy. Like, it's not a whole
strategy. I know. Yeah.
It's just sometimes. And I mean, when I played this with Erock and Tiffany, I took several bad beats in combat.
That's true.
But I still won, right? Because it's not that bad.
It's not that bad.
You got something out of it.
It's still a fight, and your guys might still die, which they're going to come back next turn anyway. So some people might not be a big fan of the fighty part of it, but I agree. At the end of the day, it doesn't hurt that much. And it just kind of makes the battles more fun, because instead of both people being super nervous about the outcome, it's just, oh, well, okay. And, one of those I described actually happened. Like, Steven came up to me with like 6 freaking die, and I had 1, and I won that battle. It's like, how did I win that battle? That's ridiculous. Like, all of his guys now die.
I flipped the table.
And you wanted to lose.
And I wanted to lose, right? I'm like, oh, cool. I like set it up that way because of the way I wanted to position the board, because there's rules where you can place down and stuff. So I wanted to lose so I could go to a different place, basically. Ended up winning the fight, which screwed me over. Oh, what are you going to do?
Yeah, good times. It's moments like that, right? That's why you play board games.
That's why you play.
All right. That was your number 8. Moving on to my number 8 is Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. Terraforming Mars, the card game, even though Terraforming Mars is a card game. So I think I like Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition more than both Terraforming Mars and Race for the Galaxy, right? It has elements of both of those games. And I think I can't imagine a situation where I would bring out Terraforming Mars or Race for the Galaxy when I have Ares Expedition at hand. It's so much easier to teach. than Race for the Galaxy, and Terraforming Mars, actually, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I love the whole, choosing what phases are going on, like you get from Race for the Galaxy. You have that here in Terraforming Mars, Ares Expedition. I guess the board part of Terraforming Mars is more interesting, right? Like the things that you're doing on the board in Terraforming Mars is definitely more interesting, but it's like twice as long. So that's what Ares Expedition has going for it over the original Terraforming Mars, is half the time to play it. And also you can play it with 6 players with the expansion, one of the 3 expansions. I forgot. The names are so horrible to the expansions, I never can remember which one is which. Oh, right?
I have all 3. I couldn't tell you a single name.
Foundations, I don't know. Yeah, I can't remember which one is which. I have 2 of them, I think. Because one of them brought back the events and milestones or awards and milestones that Terraforming Mars had, brought that into Ares Expedition. But one of them, I got just for the extra player count. I played it at the extra player count, and it doesn't take any longer, right? I mean, it's a fun game. It has an extra infrastructure track, I think is what that extra track is called when you add another player. But
it's simultaneous, so it cuts all the overhead off. You can just add another player.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they did add that other track so that, there's a little more for the extra players to do. But, so it takes just about the same amount of time. But, I love that tableau building. Like, this is what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to get these cards and I'm going to combo off that when I do this thing. And I'm going to try to trigger that a whole bunch if I can afford to do these things. Otherwise, I have to do this other thing to get, stuff so I can do the other, that whole combo building off of the cards in your tableau is great in the whole Terraforming Mars series. This is just my favorite iteration of it.
This game's still in my top 25, but it's kind of fallen spaces because I do miss the map from Terraforming Mars. I do miss that interaction, and it's just an extra layer on that game that I really enjoy. I still like Ares. If someone set it up and was like, his play, yeah, I'm sitting down. But I do find myself missing the map. So it's fallen out of favor a little bit. Still a great game.
Yeah,
I think this is a very good game, but I'm in the minority and think that both Race and Terraforming Mars are better games. But I agree with you. This is faster and easier to teach. Like, depending on which one you're talking about, it's definitely easier to teach. I think Race is one of the best games ever made, but it's so hard to teach that game to anybody who's never played it before. So I get it.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm not necessarily saying Ares Expedition is a better game. I'm just saying I'm probably going to play Ares Expedition instead of Race for the Galaxy.
I get
Ares
it.
Expedition. It's half the time of Terraforming Mars. So, and if that's the case, does that mean I'd like it better?
Yeah, I get it.
Anyway. So there we go. All right, John, what have you got at number 8?
So we'll just talk about a little bit more, but I had the crew as well with Steven. I love trick-taking games. I wish more people played them. And this game is great for one reason, and that's you can trick people into playing your trick-taking game. They're just like, oh, there's other stuff going on to it, because a lot of people find trick-taking games either to be dry or it's hard to get into. So anything that can kind of get people to go, oh, well, that sounds interesting, and give it a try more, I'm all about. So I love trick-taking. I don't get played enough. I want to draft things. I want to take tricks. Those two things make me happy. So I wish they would use that in more games and more people would play them. So this is just a great intro game to that genre. It's a great way to get people that might not necessarily be into the genre to play it, and it's just a fun game on its own.
I will say, and I found this a little odd, I have older family members who've all their life been playing games like Oh Hell and Bridge, right? Like they understand trick taking. So I thought, oh, well, maybe this will be, maybe they'll like this game because it's just trick taking, but cooperative, and interesting spin, and they did not get it. So I thought it would be like a gateway sort of game, but it was not.
The number one phenomena in board game to me is taking somebody very intelligent and they don't have a board game perspicacity, and you show them something that you seems simple. You're just like, this is child's play, and you show it to them. They're very smart, and they go, I don't get it. And it's just because they're not familiar with board games. They don't. If you don't have that built knowledge, you're just like, it's not making sense to me. It hasn't clicked for them yet. So to take somebody that you know is really smart and they can't figure out a simple board game, it boggles my mind, but it happens on a regular basis.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so that was your number 8. Would you also like to talk a little bit about the number 8 for the People's Choice, which is the Red Cathedral?
Yes. We're jumping a little bit, but Red Cathedral is by Devere Games, and those guys are killing it. I love the stuff they're putting out, and it's a very interesting game where you are building up your dice, and by doing that, you're taking little planks and putting them next to your dice, so that when you move the neutral colored dice, the ones in the rondelle, you get to trigger bonus actions from them. And when you move in the rondelle, you get resources. You use those to build the Red Cathedral. So you're essentially trying to build 6 pieces of the cathedral. You're trying to put decorations out, jeweled doors and crowns and things like that. And it's just a very interesting game because all these elements are interplaying with each other. And at the end of the day, all you're doing is collecting resources and turning them in for buildings. But it feels so much more than that when you're in the process of doing it because you can build it up. And well, now I can spend an extra money to move the white dice one more space. It lands me here. That gives me 6 stones. I'm going to use the side action and turn in 4 of those stones to turn 2 of them into gems. And then on my next turn, I'm moving 3 resources over to build this cathedral wall. It flips over. And then as a bonus element, I'm kicking this in to decorate at the same time. And I just scored 13 points. Any game with a rondelle I love. It's another one of those mechanics that just aren't used enough and I love them. So it's got that going for it. It's got a lot of interplay of when I'm going to take this, when I'm going to claim this building here, and it's really just an efficiency puzzle. But it's a cool theme. It works really well so that every decision you make feels very impactful. And at the end of the day, it's always a tight race. It's like 5 points maybe that's from first to last. So it's always just a close race, and you're fighting each other for every scrap you can get. And if I build this door too early, or if I flip this card over, Steven's going to decorate it, and he's going to take that from me. So you're really like, what is that person doing? What can I get away with? How do I time this to get the ultimate value out of it? And it's just a fun little puzzle.
Devere was on a bit of a roll for me. I read Cathedral, White Castle. We'll pretend cities didn't exist. I want to play Rock Hard. I think that one's going to be good. So anyway, all right.
Cities is the game that we played at Dice Tower Con. That's all we'll ever say about Cities.
Yes, we played it. I mean, it wasn't bad.
It was very popular.
Many people played it.
Yes, indeed.
Welcome to our neutral review of Cities.
I talked about it a little bit in my What I Played at Dice Tower convention video. So go watch that. Not right now. You're watching this. And this is interesting too. All right, let's move on to number 7. Erock. Why don't you pronounce this next game?
Absolutely. So my number 7 game is Praga Kaput Regni, which Thank you very much. Which means basically Prague, the capital of the realm, or something like that. This is a game by Vladimir Suki. This is really awesome. I very much enjoy this game. I'm going to be completely blunt with you. This is absolutely one of those dry Euro games. Like it's not, 6 hours long, but it's a fairly long game of fairly intricate decisions that, yes, you're building up the city of Prague is basically what's going on in this game. But it's really not. It's just you doing all this stuff that's interconnected. Like you can build the little buildings, which depending upon how they touch other things and go around the central points, you get points for that. You can build up your own little board of tiles, and depending upon how they touch things and how you build it, you get points for that. You can build like the King's Road that goes to the famous bridge that's in Prague that they used eggs to build back in the day, and there's these little eggs in the game, so you get the little eggs to build the road and the bridge, and you get points for that. There's these and the game comes with these 3D constructed almost like bleachers that represent 2 other facets of the game, that as you progress, you go up the different levels of these and you get points for that. It's a whole lot of you get points for all these different things that you do. But I really like the way the game works. It's very similar to a game like Kraftwagen, where there is a bit of a rondelle going on with the action selections there. As opposed to Kraftwagen, this one actually is similar, but basically when you choose, if I'm here, you can go as far as you want, kind of a thing, to grab one. And then when you do, if you go far, you get bonuses for for it being farther away. So yeah, it's going to probably be a little while to get another turn or whatever, but you get bonuses for where you go if it's farther away. So it kind of incentivizes you to do that as well. But each time you choose a tile along the rondel, it has 2 actions. So you get to choose one of those 2 actions to do. And I like that as well. That's really cool. So, if I'm trying, maybe I don't want to build a road this turn, but the thing right in front of me, which would be super easy to get, also has build a building this turn. So that's cool. I can do one of those 2 things. It's really hard to describe this game. It's really hard to describe it other than the way I did, with all these different interconnecting mechanisms that all affect each other. Like when I build the buildings, it also moves me up on these little bleachers kinds. Like everything is interconnected. It all works. You have your own personal board, has a lot of different things going on it as well. Like you keep track of like your rock mining and your gold mining. And when you get upgrades in those, sometimes you can like move this thing around, and there's like these points where if I hit a counter or something, I guess, if I hit this thing as I'm moving my mine up, then I get to pull it off and place it somewhere else, which now gives me a bonus for something else. So it's all this interconnected stuff that's going on. Like I said, the theme is there. I mean, you can look and you're building up the city of Prague, but at the end of the day, you're not thinking about building the city of Prague. You're thinking about, how do I trigger this thing 5 steps from now, is what you're thinking. And I really enjoy these kinds of games. This is a really crunchy version of it, and I think it's awesome. I know my explanation of the game is terrible, but if you really like what I'm saying about the interconnected and how all this stuff fits together and stuff, you should really give it a try, because it's really cool.
Isn't that where Tetris is set in Prague?
Tetris?
Have you ever seen the manual for the original Tetris?
I have not. No.
I'll show it to you later.
And that is Praga Kaput Regni.
Yeah, I like what you said about getting a bonus for jumping ahead. High Rise that we mentioned earlier in the People's Choice, it has a thing. It's not quite the same, but it's like whoever crosses the pier first gets to choose the thing that's there. So you want to be, the first to jump ahead for stuff. So I like those kind of decisions, crunchy decisions in games. All right, this should be quick. My number 7 is Thunder Road Vendetta.
It sure is.
There we go. All right. And John, would you like to tell me what your number 7 is?
My number 7 is a game where you put cubes on a board, and that's it. That's the entire game. It's called Guild of Merchants.
Off and then put them back on some more.
Well, don't jump ahead. We're getting there. It's called Guild of Merchants Explorers, and it's a flip and write board game, essentially, as Steven described earlier. You're going to flip a card up, and it's going to give you a terrain type, and you put your cube on that terrain type with a couple of placement rules. And you're building infrastructure, because if you explore an entire area, say that there's like 3 grasslands touching, if you explore that, you get to put a village down. It gives you some points. And then also, later on in the game, when you're taking all of your cubes off, you leave the villages, and that's now a spot you can build from. So you're kind of like spreading your influence in the area, and then that helps you spread out further later. But the really cool design of this is that there is a stack of cards, and I hope that they're doing this at some point, of adding more cards to that stack. Just give me an expansion with a double stack. I'll buy it. But essentially, it's technology cards, and every player gets 1 every round, and there's 3 rounds in the game. And then you reactivate them, but it's unique to you. So I'm putting cubes out, but I'm doing it using this technology card that is unique to me. Steven has his own, Erock has his own, and we keep going. Then we get more and more. And at the end of the game, we're all going to have 3 unique technology cards. So it's a flip and write, but each of us get 3 powers throughout the course of the game, essentially. And it really changes how it works. So if you've ever tried to flip and write, you're like, that was just okay. Try Guild of Merchant Explorers, because it takes that concept to the next level, and it is super fun.
And you don't have to rip off a sheet and throw it away when you're done.
Yeah, it's my least favorite thing in board gaming. I have Welcome To, and every time I have to tear a sheet off, I'm like, I'm not going to be able to play this game in the future because I'll be out of sheets.
I have the laminated ones they sold.
Smart.
All right, so number 7, People's Choice. Erock, can you tell us a little bit about Tiny Towns?
Sure. Tiny Towns is a cute little game. This is one of those plays mostly simultaneously with a lot of people games. So there's a lot of value there for a lot of different kinds of people. To be kind of sum this game up, you have a tiny little grid. I mean, it's like this big, okay? And then every round, which is basically every minute, it passes clockwise around the table. But the point is, like, when it's my turn, I say a color, and everybody gets a cube of that color. And then Steven's next, and he says a color. Everybody gets a cube of that color, etc. That's a turn. All right. So these turns go around the table like this with people choosing colors. Here's the trick. There's a giant stack of cards that have different kinds of Tetris-y like polyomino shapes on them with different color cubes in the different spots. And I'm going to make a couple things up just to make an example. But basically, like I might be a church, might be one of them. And a church might be like 3 blue cubes along the bottom and then a yellow cube and then a red cube. And if I get that arrangement on my grid, I've now made a church, and I can collapse it all into one space, one of the spaces that had all of these cubes in them, and make that church in that spot now. All right. So this
singularity.
It's a church singularity. Yes. So that's what this game is trying to figure out how to construct these polyomino figures out of the color cubes that you're getting, collapse them, leaving room to build more of them. And what generally happens is that somebody's better at that puzzle, and they'll be the last one going, because I am usually terrible at that puzzle. And I am one of the first people that completely runs out of room because I can no longer make a pattern that will now collapse into a building. And somebody else will have 5, 6 more turns than me because they were better at this. And there's a lot of luck in this game. Luck being, what am I trying to plan to build, and what colors does everybody else call? And, it's not luck because it's all personal choice, but at the same time, it feels like luck because they don't know what I'm trying to build really, and they're just calling colors out. You know what I'm saying? So it feels very lucky. It's like, oh yeah, you got blue for me. No.
Sometimes they look and they know, and they don't call that cube you want. Yeah.
That's absolutely true. Yeah. But I mean, for the majority of the time, like we've played this a lot with 6 players. I think it's a really good 6-player game. It plays simultaneously because you just get your cube. And if you can collapse into a building, you get that building now. That's all. And all the buildings score differently. That's where the scoring comes in, is like, I don't know, a well might score based upon what's around it. And a church might score based upon how many other churches you have. So all the different buildings have different score or scoring rules. And then, so you're trying to build this little like tactical strategy of trying to build the buildings to score off of each other, how it all works out. But like I said, it feels really lucky because people are calling, like, that guy that's 3 spots away from you on the other side of the table, he's not looking at what you're doing. He's just calling out blue. And you're like, no, blue screws me. I don't have anywhere to put blue. But it also plays fairly quick. So I've had a lot of fun with that game. That's Tiny Towns.
I got 2 copies of it and combined it, so we've played multiple times up to 9 players. But when we do that, we play the Town Hall variant, which is funny because it's flip a card and then place a cube on the board, just like Guild
right.
Merchant Explorers.
Yeah. It's a fun game. If you like Tiny Towns, check out Shake the City. Very, very similar concept and fun as well.
Yeah, that is. Yeah.
Don't know that one.
I like
John,
that game.
You're killing it.
I didn't
2 for
keep
2.
It. It only goes up to like 4, but it has that fun mechanism where you shake the thing and you put it down and you press the lever.
Yeah, and you make a grid of colors, and then first player gets to choose a color and remove it, and everyone else gets to choose from what's left over. It's really neat.
Yeah, it is
interesting.
It is pretty interesting. All right, well, that was number 7, so let's move on to number 6. Erock, give us your number 6.
My number 6 is a game that I very, very much enjoy. Probably more than anybody I've played it with. It's kind of highly regarded, but I still feel like people don't appreciate it as much as I do, kind of a thing. You know what I mean? And my number 6 is Beyond the Sun. I think this game's fantastic. This game is basically Tech Tree the game. Mm-hmm. And really, it is. It's basically Tech Tree the game. That is a giant board that is just a tech tree. There is also a tiny little bit of space exploration. that goes on a very tiny little board off to the side of the giant tech tree board. So it gives you something to do with some of that technology that you're building. But basically, the way the game works is like a tech tree. You're trying to work your way down a tech tree. I'm going to discover a technology in this space, and it's laid out like a grid, like like a bracket. Know what I'm saying? So like these two things lead into this next thing, and two of those things lead into the next thing, kind of a thing. And what's cool is if you're the like first one, like a tree, yeah, like a tech tree.
Oh, yes, that's what that means.
And
I thought it was because the cards are deciduous. I was so confused.
Well, that too. But if you're the first person to discover a technology in a spot, then you basically get to draw two cards and pick one of them, which is kind of cool, because that means you're basically determining the way everybody else is going to play the game. Because there's like 4 different faces or whatever of civilization. It's like military, economy, I don't know, science, and politics, or something like that, right? So there's 4 different things going on, but like Steven might be really kind of going for military stuff, and military's like space exploration, because you don't really fight each other, you know what I'm saying? But that's a whole lot of the space exploration side of moving ships around and claiming these other planets. And Steven might be really into that. But if I keep choosing science and kind of blocking his paths off, it cuts off all of those military options in the higher technology levels. So it is kind of cutthroat in that way, where like you can have 2 things that are it's really hard to see. Like if 2 things that are right next to each other, and like I said, they lead off, like these 2 things turn into one other thing. And if this one's yellow and this one's red, that means the thing that comes after it has to be either yellow or red, but the person discovering it chooses. So again, like if Steven's trying to get those red technologies all the way across to like the highest levels, and you keep cutting them off, then he has to totally change gears and play a tactical game of what can I do now to salvage the situation. But at the same time, I might ride somebody's coattails a little bit and see like, well, Steven's going red. If we both go red, then we're going to kind of help each other out along the way, aside from the fact that we're going to be, going for planets and stuff and the other thing. But I just really like how this game works. I've always been a fan of tech trees. I think this is one of those games where if you've played a lot of like computer games and stuff and they have tech trees in them and that's your thing, you're going to love this game. It's so cool the way that they did the tech tree in this game as the game. And it's really weird to say it's tech tree, the game, but it is. It's tech tree, the game. And I love it.
I played another game that was tech tree, the game, Progress, the Evolution of Technology. And I didn't like it that much. So I guess that's why I haven't gotten around to playing this one.
Is that made by Carl Chudik?
Glory to Rome.
All right. So move on to my number 6. This is a game that I don't ever hear anybody but me talk about, right? And this is Cosmic Colonies. So again, you've got, I think it's just an asteroid, and you're taking polyomino shapes and placing them down on the asteroid. I think you're mining an asteroid is the theme of it. So it's got that going for it. But what I think is really interesting about the game is the card play. So you have these cards and you decide, I think it's like a day and a night action or something. So you're going to play 2 of these 4 cards from your hand. And the cards have different stuff, right? Like they give you the initiative order for being able to take the polyominoes off the board because those are limited every turn, and they also have like a carrying capacity and how many of the resources you can take. And they also have some special ability written on them, right? And so you've got to sort of balance what you're trying to do that turn with the cards that you play. But what's also interesting about it is the 2 cards that you play at the end of that round, you're going to hand to your opponent on your left. So sometimes if you've got some really cool thing, you actually just kind of want to sit on it because you don't want to give it to your opponents to start using. So yeah, there's all that balance. Like, oh, do I need to play this to get these resources? Do I need to play this to make sure I get this polyomino before somebody else takes that one? Or, do I want to just sit on this card and play it a little bit later for some reason or another? So anyway, it's the kind of game where it looks fairly basic, but then when you play it, it's a little deeper than it looks, I think. So yeah, had a lot of fun playing that game. Cosmic Colonies. Recommend you check it out. It's like medium weight kind of game.
Sounds like Onitama with the card play.
Yeah, I mean, Onitama is. I've definitely played a game of Onitama where somebody else just sat on a card the whole time.
Yeah, right.
I know the person's name.
Yeah, and that was, I don't know. It not only was it annoying, it also wasn't fun, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know, because
you get like the same 2 moves.
Well, yeah, I mean, the cards that were in play just meant you couldn't do something that was it was just because of the cards that were out. I think holding that one card back made the game not fun. And I don't know. I don't play games to win. I play games to have fun. So whatever. Anyway, all right, John, why don't you tell me what your number 6 is?
Yes, you can't have Red Cathedral without the follow-up, which is White Castle. It has nothing to do with small hamburgers, but now I'm hungry. Essentially, they love dice, and they love using dice for strategic purposes at Devere, which is a really neat concept. You only get 9 actions over the course of this entire game. And whenever you hear that, you're just like, doesn't feel like you're doing anything. It feels like you get 27. Because every action you do can chain into other actions and can do other benefits. And there's a section of your board that you build up over time by putting cards down there. And whenever you take a lantern action, you get all of those benefits again. You keep building it up. The lantern actions give you more. And then the dice, if you take the higher number, it's usually going to give you money back when you take an action. If you take a lower number, you're probably going to have to pay money to take the action. But when you take the lower number, you get to use a lantern. So there's so much interplay on what dice you choose, and then the face value of that dice determines how much it costs or how much you get back. And then you activate the action. You put workers out, which makes your board stronger because underneath the worker is extra icons as well. So it's one of those games that everything you do feeds into another thing that you can do, and you're planning for a couple turns down the road, and you're using 9 actions, and you can end up getting like 105 points out of 9 actions because you've used it to do so many other things. And when it clicks and you're just like, you have an amazing turn and you got to do your lantern action and you got to do the castle action and send people out, and you do all this stuff, and it just feels so satisfying when that payoff happens. And it's just a very fun middleweight game where you're using dice, but it's not about luck or rolls. It's about taking what dice you have available and making the best use you possibly can. So a lot of fun interplay, a lot of fun, what other people do really does matter. You have to try to figure out what they're trying to do so you can tailor your strategy to what you might have available on your turn. But it's just a very fun game by the same people that made Red Cathedral, and they're 2 of my favorite games of all time. Devere is, like I said, Devere and Restoration Games are killing it right now.
I like games that are just like, oh, I want to do this. Oh, but I want to do that. Oh, but I need to do this. And then, White Castle was totally in that area, right? Where it's just like, you can't do all the things you want to do. But at the same time, it also snowballs, like you were saying. And that toward the end, you're like, oh, I'm going to trigger my lantern, which lets me do this and this and this and this and scores me some points. And it's good stuff. All right. So number 6, People's Choice. We've already talked about it. It is The Crew.
Talked about it twice. Good game.
Yeah. And also, by the way, I said that, we surveyed people on our Discord to help building this aggregate list. So thanks to Bob, who coordinated that, by the way. Shout out to
Thank you, Bob.